everyone. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Brian. And thank you to everyone for joining us live.
Our guest today is Craig Sim Webb, an award-winning filmmaker, author, physicist, and dream researcher from Canada. His work blends music, film, and dreams in fascinating ways.
Well, for me, it kind of happened in the reverse order that you mentioned it, the filmmaking being last and the dream research, and in quotes, being first. I guess as a good little physicist, because one of me is a physicist, but at the time I was a physicist, kind of very first person, full focus, objective mind, science, provability, very in my head. I had a powerful near drowning. I guess that's really where it started quite a bit. Stuck under a raft, whitewater rafting, cold, swirling, stilty water. So I can't see much. I had my life jacket on, but unfortunately I'd bumped into the raft a number of times and I didn't have time to gasp for air when I went under. And then a strange thing happened. I mean, a little bit surprising. At the time I had sort of a feeling of surprise because all of a sudden I got very quiet and peaceful and a simple single thought kind of took over my awareness. Wow. I guess I'm dying right now. I'm going to drown here. This is it. And the surprising part was that it was very peaceful and pleasant almost. So a little bit of surprise. The fight and flight was gone. And then almost like a movie here for our filmmaker friends, cut to next scene. Don't exactly remember because this was a long time ago, but pretty much something like the guide pulled me out. Probably I coughed up a couple of fish. And then all of a sudden, to make a longer story short, I started dreaming the day after and the week and even the month after, 10 times a day. Very clear recall, vivid dreams with feelings, sensations, smells, and something that was really outside of the ordinary for me. I wasn't against dreams, but I just had never been interested, with physics class. And then I just started noting the data like a good little scientist, recording my dreams, studying. And long story short, it led to personal explorations, what I call subjective science for quite a while, inner investigations, and tracking the data, tracking dreams, tracking the results when they showed up in life and when I acted on them. And then eventually led for the Stanford University research. Have you guys heard of lucid dreaming?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of a little bit more of a buzz phrase these days, especially for movie makers. I had the good fortune to be at the World Pioneering Dream Research Lab at Stanford that proved the scientifically proved lucid dreaming as being valid and sort of designed some cool technology there to help people have lucid dreams. And long story short, got really inspired to bring more of the messages and the research and the insights and the experiences out to more and more people, as many as possible ideally, but at least really core, helpful ideas that can inspire, empower. And in short, that's kind of been my journey.
All right. Thanks for your story. Wow. Ugh. I can't imagine being under I can't imagine that. So let's talk about dreams and creativity.
Yeah, we like to start with a quote that really fits today. Dream with the heart, share to art. What does that mean to you, Craig?
Oh, yeah, that's a quote I phrase. And I think if your producer that pulled it from my website, they might have left out the little line across the top of the E, which most people don't really look at or recognize. But that's actually kind of important. And I mention it just because in Old English, we're talking 1,000, 1,500 years ago old, actually dream means joy and music. Interesting that Old English word has a very direct tie-in. And I happened to have a student at the time I was researching that and adding it to one of my books. And I found out that in Chinese, because she spoke Chinese, very close to the exact same symbol means dream, joy, and music. I was like, wow, totally different culture and yet the same connection. So that kind of gives a little bit of a framework that they're tied together when we're creating art. Our joy, our feelings, our deeper subconscious dreaming. For me, it sort of describes a process. I guess dreaming true is one fancy way to say actually going into our deeper level, maybe subconscious, remembering a dream, having a lucid dream, maybe even a deep creative state that's not fully asleep, but something that's a little altered from how I'm speaking now. And sort of choosing to dream maybe a little more consciously, having an intention, getting excited, enthusiastic about something before sleep, reading, or even if you do it unconsciously, you watch a scary movie or listen to the terrible news before sleep, probably you'll dream about it. So the idea here is dream with heart. Even the word art is in the word heart. I think it's on purpose because we can kind of choose our focus, at least before sleep. During the day or when we get ready for the day, we get all our makeup on and we kind of get prepared and we go dress nicely, etc. And we plan and we go prepare for the day. But how many people actually prepare before they go to sleep to meet maybe even more important people like our true self or deep guides or inner wisdom or just even creative insights that come every night? Do we plan? Do we clear? Do we prepare? Not so many people do that too often, and I'm not always even doing it. But when I do it, I know that I'm dreaming more with heart. And then any creative actions in waking life that come from that, hopefully, and usually do have more heart. So there you go.
Wow, that's fascinating. I never knew, and I love the history of words, the origin of words. In your book, The Dreams Behind the Music, you share stories from artists like Paul McCartney, Sting, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, the Rolling Stones, to name a few. Could you tell us a favorite story and maybe the craziest dream you've heard from an artist?
Oh, wow. There's so many. There are, I think, 200 and 250 now artists. I guess there's many that stick out. Depends on the moment, what I feel. Today, the one that kind of comes is Bono, our U2 frontman, who's quite a dreamer. Recently had a big dream with The Edge, the guitarist for David Letterman, so people can check that out. But the one that sticks out for me a little bit more past was he was kind of, I guess, half awake, getting into a dreamy state before a huge performance at Wembley Arena. And U2 was going to have a big show, etc. And he's kind of half awake, dreaming and intending. And then he wakes up with this song and the lyrics and a little bit of a melody, what I usually call something like a song seed. It's not necessarily the whole thing, start to finish, but the idea, the melody, and certainly a feeling. And he goes, "Mystery girl, she's a mystery to me. Hey, you know what? That sounds like Roy Orbison. That sounds really Orbisonic, if you'll forgive the bad pun there." So he kind of says, "Oh, okay." And he had an album playing when he was kind of half awake, listening. And he went and looked at the album, which was Blue Velvet, the David Lynch film. I don't know if you know. But it's got some very dreamy sequences in there. And there actually is a Roy Orbison song on there, In Dreams, which that's a whole song inspired by Dreams too, one of Orbison's huge hits. But without going too far down to the side there, Bono said, "Oh, well, I don't know if that's Orbison's song because there's no mystery girl on there, but maybe I just dreamt it." Or get my accent right. Maybe I just dreamt it. And he kind of thought about it. He was pretty inspired. He actually, during the sound check, sort of was working on the song and singing it to the guys in the band. He said, "Hey, what do you think? Does this sound good?" He says, "Orbison, I dreamt this last night. I'm not sure." And the guy said, "Yeah, it sounds pretty cool, mate. We'll work on it later because we were practicing it." And then they had the show, and I guess they did some encores. I don't know that exact detail. But even in the dressing room after the show, he was so inspired by this dream, he just went right to working on the song again, instead of like being tired or whatever after a few encores. And all of a sudden, there's a knock at the door. The security guard, I think John, I'm not sure his name, but he comes in and says, "There's a gentleman here to see with his wife. I don't usually let random people in, but it's Roy Orbison." And Bono had never met him, and he didn't know that he was at the concert, and all the guys in the band pulling our crank. And he said, "No, I don't know anything about it." So Orbison walks in and in this kind of quiet way says, "I really like the music. And by the way, do you have a song for me?" Out of nowhere, his second comment after he said he liked the music is, "Do you have a song for me?" And so Bono was laughing, almost like incredulous, that I guess I do. And it ended up being a big song on Orbison's final album. And not too many people know, but it actually got included as a key element of the Aquaman soundtrack, the huge film by Marvel. Mystery Girls in there, and a dream came true for many millions.
Wow.
I think that's awesome. And the connectivity of things like that. How could you imagine a dream and being connected to him being in the audience? I love that. I'm curious, speaking of dreams, like how do you take all these wild dreams and ideas and turn them into music that people can actually feel?
It's a good one. Feeling, I think, is kind of the key, right? Mixed in with the question is part of the answer, I would say. There's probably lots of roots because every artist and artist have different ways, from musicians to filmmakers, even like engineers are kind of creative artists. Google, the $3 trillion company here, came from a dream, the seed, obviously. So how does everybody do it? A little bit differently. I can suggest a couple routes. One is kind of talk or write about it, write about the feelings. Either if it's a film you're making, just you sort of kind of tell about it, include it. Like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde came from Robert Louis Stevenson telling about his strange dream and telling about dreams. Or Salvador Dali actually consulted with Hitchcock because Hitchcock wanted to know the worldwide, or at least culture-wide, scariest themes of people's nightmares. And so Dali knew a lot of that from his surrealism and his dream explorations and informant. So Hitchcock created kind of horror movies telling about and showing some of the archetypes in film. I would say there's another approach, or even like for music, Billie Eilish, Teddy Swims, two big names now, talk about or tell about or add in elements of their nightmares, sort of visual storytelling in the music and the lyrics. And then you can get to a little different, more, maybe I'm using the word a little loosely, forgive me, Lenny, but Lenny Kravitz uses like a shamanic kind of dreaming. Example, he wakes up with a new melody. He kind of goes quiet for a month, meditating, getting into it, tuning in, getting in a state. But he has dreamt music before, and he dreams of music for his new albums, Raising Vibration. And he kind of stays in like a half awake state, walks over to the studio, which is very close to where he actually sleeps in Bahamas. And kind of in a half awake state with the lights dim, just kind of really enters the feeling of the dream. And he has a little bit of melody there that maybe he just even without looking, picks out on the guitar or puts the rhythm on the drums there. And then just starts spontaneously singing lyrics or maybe just playing from that feeling. And I think that's perfect because the research I showed in my book actually is quite strong to show that feelings and music are tied very intimately together. Maybe from the word dream I mentioned before, but even something as, I guess, statistical, almost scientific as a friend of mine in LA who runs immersive environments, I guess huge dome performances. Said, about 2/3 of the emotional impact of a movie, according to statistical research. 2/3, that's shocking to me, is actually from the music. So the emotional impact, very tied to the music. Hopefully we write a good screenplay, but don't forget the soundtrack.
Yeah, no kidding. Music is so important to carry the threads through,
And the emotions, right?
Yeah, and the emotions for sure. For anyone watching who wants to use dreams for songwriting, what is a simple way to start? What would be the first step?
I guess just learn a little bit that it's possible. Possibly some of our listeners are already spontaneously or maybe intentionally using the creative tool, what I call the internet. It's kind of like the internet, but it's the invisible equivalent of our dreams, maybe deep intuitions. And when we tune into the internet in different ways by recalling dreams is one pretty good way. We can get some amazing stuff, but there's lots of stuff on the internet. So that means there's all kinds of random stuff on the internet also. So it's good to sort of dream with heart or choose, have an intention, have a feeling, maybe watch a video that's close to what we want to create as we fall asleep, or listen to some music that's really inspiring, a favorite artist. Or maybe if you have a few dreams that you have, just reread them before sleep, especially if they had music or maybe video or film ideas, then just kind of remember those. And it's a suggestion. I'm sure you two have, and many of the listeners have fallen asleep with, hey, I have this problem. I'm just going to sleep on it. Ever done that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's pretty common. And we don't really intentionally use or maybe name the process, but it's pretty much the same thing. We're putting a focus, maybe a mental momentum, an emotional momentum into our mix as we fall asleep. And it's very likely that we'll start to dream on that topic or dream about it. If we get lucid, that's another little doorway. We can actually intentionally choose during the dream. So we're conscious when we're lucid, sleeping. We can kind of be interacting with the dream a lot more and guide the content. And then we can choose, walk into the dream studio. If we're an artist, look on the wall for paintings or speak to our favorite director if we're a filmmaker in a intentionally chosen dream scene. And that's often quite possible. And amazing insights come for lucid dreamers too. But we don't have to be lucid. Just the intention before sleep starts to ramp up the lucidity that we're guiding the content at least.
We have a interesting question from the audience. So the feeling is the vibration of frequency that emanate to create, isn't it?
Yeah. Feelings are very strong for action. It gets to sort of I don't like the word metaphysics, but let's say sort of expanded physics, because this is really how life works. So in life, we act on thoughts. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but every action is a thought in motion. It's sort of obvious, but it's subtle and extremely powerful. We really want to start choosing our thoughts. If every action we've ever taken or anybody else has ever taken came from a thought, and to start to guide and choose the content of our thought. And ideally, the thought can get connected with like deep connection, empathy for people, heart, the feeling, or a really strong gratitude, or a wish, maybe excitement, a thriller. If we want to write horror, we can get into our freakiest out moment, if that's our creative craft, and really follow that feeling right into an idea. Probably it'll seed a dream, which will bring a creative spark, et cetera, et cetera. Example here, James Cameron, colleague of mine that I've had the good fortune to interact and work with, actually said that a powerful, powerful nightmare ended up being his breakthrough movie, the seed, kind of the DNA of the idea, ended up being the seed for Terminator. A chrome skeleton and he said the archetype, just the image, which normally might not be that freaky if you just think about it, but this chrome skeleton coming out of a fire and is sort of coming back from the future. He said he woke up screaming, like it was just like super intense spear. And he didn't necessarily understand everything what it meant psychologically. Didn't have to, because as an artist, he just said, wow, if that kind of image scares the bejesus out of me as much as that, why wouldn't I include that in a key element in the film? And Terminator became that. And he actually kept the exact elements from the dream on the movie poster, kind of not messing with kind of that DNA or the core idea. Interesting, huh? So the feeling, definitely links up with our actions in waking life and links up with other people's feelings. It's not just, but that's where a lot of the links happen. In fact, if you want a quick little, I guess, technique or tip, because we promised some tips today to help understand a dream a little bit intellectually, or see at least what it's connected with in our life, you could say interpret, but I prefer the word integrate a dream, kind of integrateness of our life, act on it, dream true. Just to kind of say, hey, what was the feeling in the dream and where's that same feeling? But connect with it in our body. Don't just think it. Oh yeah, I got this kind of weird pain in my leg. Where's that same feeling in my life? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't really want to go to workout yesterday, and so on. Well, if we kind of ask that question and connect with the feeling, it'll come to an insight, and then the insight can lead to an action. In short, that's kind of how it goes to have inspired art.
How about for any of those of you listening in, any of our audience, if a dream has ever inspired a song or a piece of music, just let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
Audience participation is so key to shows like this, because, it inspires. So, you're right. Dreams aren't always pretty, but even nightmares can be useful creatively. I haven't had a musical dream, which is interesting because you talk about music and I think it's really fascinating.
Can I share a little friendly suggestion with you and listeners?
Yeah.
First, I want to check in because would you like a musical dream?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's not obvious. Some people are like, oh, I'm too busy or whatever their thing is. But if you choose it, that's a good first doorway. Even talking about it today already starts creating some momentum like, wow. So curiosity. These are kind of obvious or maybe subtle, unobvious or subtle things. But when I say curiosity, that ends up being like a really key element that gets these dreams coming in, sort of attracts them. Playfulness, curiosity, strange things we don't normally think about, but they really help. So like, oh, okay, maybe I could dream tonight music. Why not? That crazy Craig guy said something like it's really possible. In fact, in one smaller research study that I did initially, every single person in the study ended up dreaming music within the first week. And 2 people had 3 dreams. And most of them had it the first night they tried. So you can start to see, even for me on a research level, shock, 100% is like shocking. And it's played out a little bit then. It's almost like there's like an on-off mute button. And most people don't realize it's possible, or maybe wake up with a recorder. Maybe they had a melody, but didn't really track it or call it. But the moment we press unmute or have an intention falling asleep, this would be actually what we do and say, well, it'll be fun to dream some music, and maybe I'll play this little song to myself just before I go to sleep, or I'll hum it and watch what happens. By the way, one of the proofreaders from my Dreams Behind the Music book said, I don't think that's possible. It sounds a bit unlikely, or you're making it up. You're trying to sell books. I said, well, hopefully it does sell books because it's accurate, but don't believe me, just try it. And the person was open enough, they're proofreading, so they were kind of immersed in the idea. And they said, oh my God, the first night I ever tried it, I had this song. But it was a song that I know. And I said, okay, well, what was your intention? He said, oh, I just wanted to dream music. Well, if you get a little more focused or choose a little more intentionally, you want a new song? He said, yeah, I'd like something original. He said, just kind of have that a little bit in the mix as you fall asleep. And the next time he tried, that happened. So maybe this is a little bit unlikely because one night. But I'd say within a week, pretty much every listener could at least have dream recall happening. And with a little bit of focus and maybe some playful curiosity, you can start having musical or filmmaking dreams or health dreams. There's lots of applications, but creativity is a big, big one.
That's really cool. I'm going to have to try that.
Okay, great. I want the full report from you and listeners. People are welcome to email me. I love it when I sort of get feedback. It just helps me know what's getting people, jived and jazzed.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. With our next question, you mentioned it a little bit when you were talking about James Cameron, but in your article, Nightmare Lucky You talked about how nightmares can actually help you. Can you explain that a little bit more in depth?
Sure, that's really good. I'm glad you mentioned it, Brian, because it's kind of core to how life works. So I'm using the word a little loosely, but daymares, really unpleasant waking events, kind of have the same or operate in the same principle. Hopefully we can catch them soon. And you'll see what I mean by that when I explain a little more of the exact point. So nightmares have a few different ways or reasons or require too much extra work, as if we have like sort of a body level nightmare, or we had some weird medication, or, just like even like a big MSG pizza at midnight before we went right to bed. We might have a body level dream. It's still a bit of a message, don't have the MSG pizza at midnight if you had a nightmare. But it doesn't necessarily bring a lot of creative insight or anything to interpret it. But usually a little more common, I would say, more common than sort of the body level dreams are either kind of warning dreams or guidance dreams. They end up being kind of the same thing. So I'd ask you a question for you and listeners, and maybe you guys can answer and listeners can all think. Is the smoke alarm that you probably have in your house helpful?
I don't know.
That's good. Better check the batteries. So I like your answer because it's playful. It's good too. And also, if we kind of use the symbol, the analogy that I'm using here, if it does go off, hopefully that'll be super helpful, because probably you're not going to trigger it unless you're just testing the battery or something. It's probably going to go off maybe in the middle of the night or sometime when you're not really paying attention to whatever is going on. And most likely that's because something really unpleasant, probably up the level of a fire, is starting. So a super important warning signal. It's like the oil light on our car also. Same kind of idea, warning. We don't really want to have the oil light go off. Oh no, I have to go get a big oil change at checkup. That's like $200, $300. But isn't that much better than $1,000 head job, like 100 miles down the road if it was guiding us about something really important that was out of whack in the motor? Same thing for the smoke alarm. Yeah, we don't want to get that message, but super good that we did get it, because then we didn't, have a terrible burning scenario. And that's the same for nightmares. A warning, a bitter medicine, but an important medicine to help us avoid some upcoming event, most likely. Maybe a lost job, health problem, relationship blowout, something pretty serious in waking life that we can catch early. So on a subtle level, we get a warning dream. I could give tons and tons and tons of examples. It doesn't have to just be used for creativity like James Cameron. It's often a warning of a probable future, not a guaranteed future, but a likely future. If we don't change course, that's what's going to happen. So follow the guidance. And example here for my personal life, just so you can see I'm not just borrowing from pop culture. I had a very close friend, and we have cottages on the same lake. And I dreamt this huge fire at his cottage, like burning, like really bad feeling, right? So the feeling being key, like, whoa. I interpreted it a little symbolically. Hey, is there anywhere where I'm kind of putting too much energy in my life or not paying a care, or something even more practical, like am I putting the screen over the fireplace and stuff? So I kind of did my first personal check-in, and then it seemed okay. So I just went to him. Maybe this is a little more telepathic, or maybe tuning into the world somehow. And I said, by the way, is everything okay? I think you were burning branches in your backyard lately, weren't you? Kind of cleaning up the island. He goes, oh yeah, I was putting some big bonfires in the backyard. In fact, I'm going to do one tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. I don't want to freak you out, but I'm just scratching my eye there because it's like an insight, right? I'm like, geez. I said, just humor me. And I said, do you burn the brush like open? Is there any trees? He goes, well, yeah, there's some trees around. And I just make a little pot. I said, would you use like a big can and like make sure there's no low hanging branches? Because I had this dream, the whole cottage burned down. Long story short, that dream did not come true. So we could say, and we can't really prove it scientifically whether it would have come true. But let's just say it wasn't a big expense for him to find a big caster and like cut some branches and be a little more careful. And the outcome, which I've seen before, is when we don't follow it. Unfortunately, the unprobable or the probable and not so pleasant event can indeed happen. So if it's not too expensive, I say just protect anyways.
We had a comment from the it's off the nightmare thing, but it's an interesting comment, and I think it's probably happened to all of us.
Okay.
Solved world problems in my dreams. This is from Farley. Or had ideas for stories or business ideas, but a few minutes after waking, the thoughts evaporated. Very frustrating.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Farley. That's probably a common experience. By the way, I sometimes have it. So we don't want to get too, overconfident about it. But just think about maybe a little technique or a tip is kind of what I hear in there, a little bit of a question. Think about it like an internet connection. We do want to increase our bandwidth or maybe make sure that we're getting a good Wi-Fi signal or sort of tuning in well. One of the ways of tuning in is how do we log the dreams? So yes, the data is coming, but if we don't really have a way to record and act on it, maybe even tally it a little bit, that could be a problem because we lose it. Like Farley said, lots of creative insights and inventions probably didn't happen because the person forgot it. I document lots of levels of that in my book from people who actually didn't remember any of the dream, but even just followed the feeling and made incredible music hit with the feeling. So it's sort of a specific feeling in a body place, and the feeling connects with the dream and probably with other people who have that feeling. And then if you want to actually log it a little bit more and start to use a bit of beta state, that's kind of science speaking, but our regular waking consciousness. So writing down a dream or speak it into a voice recorder right away, like almost when we wake up. Voice recorder is good because you don't even have to open your eyes. And a lot of the top artists who do music from dreams, including like 25 plus Grammys directly attached to dreams, have a voice recorder or something like it be near their bed, or occasionally they tell their partner, but our partner's not always wanting to be woken up in the middle of the night. So if we're sleeping with somebody, so think of a voice recorder. And once we track it, then listen to it later or write it or review the dreams if we wrote them down. And that starts bridging the sort of, the little bit subtle dream memories, a little bit of a different alter state. It bridges it into our waking mind, our conscious, our intellect, and it gives us a little more easy recall, but also like ability to kind of think about, hey, how could I best turn this into my screenplay or into a song? So we can add in some mind and mental also.
So do you have a personal example of a nightmare that led to a creative breakthrough? I mean, you talked about warning, but what about creativity?
Yeah, wow. Well, I'm fortunate that I usually act on most of my nightmares in positive ways. In other words, I'll sort of use them as guidance streams, not always creative input. But that usually very directly leads to creative insights. I was kind of having that question in mind before today. I could say there's quite a number of presentations because I'm also a speaker, presenter, lead teleclasses also. Which I can think of one big one for like 600 or 700 people in London. I was invited for a big presentation there, a big talk, London, England, and had a warning dream. And this is a common one. So maybe other listeners who have this, and you guys tell me if you have it too. I was kind of in an exam, unprepared. Oh my gosh, I don't know what the answers are. I looked at my books. I'm not studying. I woke up. You ever had that?
A recurring dream. Yes, that's one of two of my recurring dreams.
Okay, well. That will resonate with probably many of the listeners with slight variations. Radio announcers have, oh my God, dead air. I don't have my notes. Who's my guest? So the same kind of thing of sort of the feeling sense is similar, but sometimes the scenario is a little different. But unprepared, often it does connect with the high school exam. You'll be surprised. That's a very common worldwide theme, an archetypal theme. And for me, that was pretty clear. On one level, hey, how can I deal with stress? Because there's always going to be stress. So a little bit of an action item, keep the meditation, make sure I do my workouts, make sure I'm not too attached to being like a superstar or being like a super loser, just kind of do my best and really focus on what I want to accomplish. And then the warning side of it, which I did follow for that one and a number of others that were the same element, same idea. I actually started putting a lot more time into researching, preparing the talk and the presentation of the slides and everything, so that I wasn't in the middle of a presentation, juggling 5 things, like not knowing what I was going to say next. And I believe it helped quite a bit in the presentation and active out and served many people, I hope.
I hope that we can hear from our audience too on maybe if you've ever turned a nightmare or a story or into a story or share it in the chat. We want to hear it because it's interesting. So let's move on from music to filmmaking. How dreams shape your films, Brian?
Yeah, can you give us an example of a project where a dream influenced the story, visuals, or soundtrack?
Sure, I can. You're talking to the right person for that question, since pretty much everything I do, or most things I do, actually come from dreams. So hopefully I'm not too jaded, and hopefully just because I'm a passionate explorer like this, it doesn't limit any listeners like, oh, he's got the... Everybody can develop this. I was a recovering thinkaholic. What does that mean? That means I'm a physicist who had to learn how to kind of explore emotions and kind of get some of these creative, intuitive insights. And I'm pretty sure from research and everything, anybody who wants to can do this, and usually much quicker than I did. So just because I'm a little bit on the cause here, in the cause, I would hope everybody else just gets inspired and open and tries it, even like this week or tonight. Dreaming true, bring it true. For me, I guess one film that stuck out is one during the pandemic. It wasn't a huge one, but it was kind of an interesting foray into very experimental art. I dreamt of this powerful kind of guide person. He said, hey, there's this incredible treasure waiting for you in this cave nearby if you want to go get it. I was like, well, that's kind of an invitation if I ever heard one. Of course I want to go get it. So in the dream, I go into the cave. Long story short, I ended up pulling this very interesting bottle out of the water in the cave, right in the back of the cave, and woke up. I didn't have the bottle in my hand, but I did remember super clearly what the bottle was. And I was like, wow, that's a treasure. What the, so logical mind's like, I don't know. But I started going, well, I've seen that bottle. And it turns out for Christmas that year, it was at the start of the pandemic, I made these special little gifts for everybody, kind of private gifts for family and friends and such, where I put little LEDs that light up inside bottles. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
Yep.
We had this very cool idea. That'd be fun, like fireflies in a bottle. And I gave them away as gifts. And one of the bottles was the exact one from my dreams. And I think I thought I still had it. So I went and looked around in my collection, and I did still have it. And I was looking at it, walking around the room. Look at this Scotch whiskey. And in the dream, I kind of knew it was like a Scotch whiskey. I was like, oh, what the heck is this a treasure? Now you have to know this other thing. In my house, I have a big prism in the window, like really big. And it makes a big rainbow on the wall on the other side. I walked in front of it with the bottle, and then this huge morphed, strange looking rainbow, but still kind of rainbowish, but in a whole different shape, went on the wall. I was like, whoa, that's cool. And my scientist got pretty intrigued and started experimenting with different glassware, bottles, and so on. Long story short, it became a film. And I had like about 30 pictures during the pandemic. I know, what were we doing? I was just sitting around making creative photos. And I was getting this collection of like melodies, because I dream music a few times a week or more. And I had all these song seeds. So I just did like quick 10, 20-second song seed. And I put them together and made this film. So very experimental, but it felt really fulfilling. And I won some awards and actually got selected at, I think, a dozen festivals and got a little bit of traction out there. I was pretty surprised because I wasn't really trying to make too much of a narrative. But sometimes there's a bit of an archetypal truth in whatever I was exploring that kind of connected with people. I hope so. And the music itself sometimes speaks a language that I don't know what it means consciously.
So speaking of, along those lines, Craig, your film Be Living in the Ocean, what was that dream and how did it turn into a movie?
Well, that one kind of takes me for a deep breath there, because it reminds me of a time which was very tough. My father passed away, and it wasn't really a smooth journey. It was a pretty long, like 8-month journey, and big challenges with health, family, hospitals, you name it. So I needed to get a break, which I really did. And I flew to Hawaii, took a little break by the beach, play, integrate some of the challenging, the grieving also. And then I had the first dream since he passed with my deceased father. So I think some help from the other side, maybe. That's my interpretation. And I know a little bit when it's just kind of a metaphorical or maybe working on emotional stuff kind of dream. And when it's an actual connection with, let's say, a deeper layer or a deeper part of some being, in this case, my dad. And it was definitely a deeper kind of visitation. And he said, let's go catch some big fish. Come on, son. I was like, oh, okay, Dad. And I woke up. It wasn't too long, but it was pretty clear with kind of an action item and like, let's do it, act on this dream, which kind of slips in a little technique. I encourage everybody to ask a little different question than one might be a pretty common question, not just what does a dream mean, but another question that could be very interesting and brings different insights and impulses and hopefully different results is what does the dream want? So a little different question can bring different actions and events. In this case, I asked, what does this dream want? Because I don't have a fishing rod here. I'm in Hawaii on vacation. I'm probably not going to go deep sea fishing. I wasn't really planning on it. Oh, maybe I'll go whale watching or something. I don't know. But I didn't. I kind of put it in my inbox, but I said, I'll ponder about it and I'll see. I'll kind of leave it close to my intellect during the day and we'll see. Because it's kind of a strong guidance from my beautiful father who came in a dream. So it's probably got some extra oomph behind it. And that day, I was just kind of relaxing on the side of the grass by the ocean because my partner wanted to take a day off. And I said, okay. And I happened to be experimenting with my drone. I was kind of an early drone pilot, which interestingly happened I just started playing with drones just as my dad was in palliative care. So it was interesting timing there. And there's a lot more backstory I won't get into, but I can say that there was a very important element, I'll just say, on his birthday where I took him up in a glider flight. Because I remembered when I was a teenager, he said that was the most important thing he'd never done by becoming a father that he always wished to do. And I was like, what? So I think there's a bit of a connection there with what's coming. But I'm playing with my drone back on the Hawaii beach here. And my partner says, okay, I have to go to the ladies' room and don't do anything crazy. Unfortunately, she knows me too well. But I hadn't been flying anywhere past the beach because I was too nervous about wind changes and losing, $1,000 kind of submarine drill. And so I wasn't doing anything too risky, except that I saw this big whale spout come above the ocean, like a huge, when I guess in this case, the humpback whales kind of shoot up their air. But it was like, a couple of kilometers out there, it wasn't anywhere near the beach or shore. And it was like, wow. And at the same moment, the dream comes, right when I see the spout. Oh, catch some big fish on video. Oh, okay, that's a little different than I thought, like catch big fish. Catch them on video. Oh, okay, oh boy. And then I hit a fear block. That means like $1,000 submarine risk of my drone going goodbye. And if I fly out that far, will I ever get back? This isn't like quick next door, 10 seconds. It's like 3 to 4 or 5 minutes to get there. And then that same amount of time to get back. And winds can change pretty big in Hawaii and stuff. Anyways, I thought, okay, worst case scenario is the best story I'm going to be able to tell. I hope if it does work. And also I need to face some fears and get on with it because there's some amazing things here out in the ocean that I can't just stay limited. So a little fear breakthrough, I guess a little bit of a daymare that I went past money concerns or stress from losing my drone and got the most incredible footage. And that led to some other footage and the story that became my film, which is done very well here. Maybe some archetypal elements of sort of father-son connection, the big fish. But the main thing that I think kind of is invisible there, that it's not too obvious, that I think has helped resonate, even won the Grand Jury Award in the Hollywood Festival. I think beat out 226 other films. I was like, wow, how did that happen? Because I don't think I put that much time into it compared with these other amazing filmmakers. And I don't really know, but the soundtrack itself actually came from a very deep and heartfelt music dream that I felt was directly connected with my father. And I knew right away that was what I had to put. So maybe there's a sort of invisible resonance, not sure. That's the story of Be Living in the Ocean, in short. Thanks for asking.
Can you talk a little bit about how you balance literal storytelling with dreamlike surreal sequences?
Yeah, well, that was just acting on the guidance from the dream. So it was pretty literal storytelling. I told the story of how I got the film. I guess I would borrow a little bit from others that it doesn't necessarily have to be always including the dream itself as an exact literal sequence. It might be. Akira Kurosawa included many of his dreams as very artistic experimental films, but it might not get like as big an audience. I'll pick on my colleague and actually close acquaintance, James Cameron, because I had a powerful dream that actually guided me in person to meet and sort of connect with James quite a bit. I won't get into that, but I took a big risk and financial risk to go and meet him, and I did, and it worked out. And he ended up sharing on this national radio interview that I invited him on the dreams that inspired his big hits, I guess, Avatar, the whole series, I guess, initially. But even the first film came from two dreams. One seeded from his mom. She dreamt of these tall blue warrior people in an alien landscape and kind of this whole trippy thing. She told James, goes, wow, that's pretty cool. So he wrote a short story. And then he had a powerful dream sometime later, where he had this bioluminescent river and these glowing animals and plants and things. He's like, wow, that's very cool. I got to include that in a film, very visual. And when he said, I got to turn this into a film, the story about the tall blue warrior people, and the alien planet. And those are the key films. And he included both elements on the poster, like we mentioned before. He really doesn't mess too much with the archetypes. But in this case, he didn't necessarily tell the exact dreams of his mom, or he didn't tell the exact dream of the whole river and everything. He just took the elements as seeds and then sort of crafted a story or film, maybe some imagery and some other things around them. I just remember that he actually named, it was like 5 million or maybe more plants. He got some like botanist or somebody to name every plant and why the bioluminescence in his like alien landscape, because the plants don't exist. So he really got into like sort of choosing to incorporate the dream somehow. It's the backstory and we don't really see it, but there is something behind those plants that kind of has this magic to them, and they like smack the whole thing and it lights up.
That's awesome. Next question I'd like to ask then in relation is for filmmakers that are tuning in, are there ways to bring dream logic into their own visuals?
Yeah, well, we just mentioned a couple, I'd say kind of included as a seed. This would be true for music artists too. If you got like a little hook for your song, or maybe there's this crazy visual, like a super strong chase dream with a strong feeling. By the way, this was Jimmy Webb had that powerful dream and turned it into The Highwayman, which was a song that got picked up, created a whole group. Johnny Cash and a bunch of guys actually named their group after this song and used the song as their number one. So he didn't necessarily tell the whole story. He told a few bits of it in the lyrics, but he used the seeds feeling as kind of the core for the music and I guess the story of a chase, the archetype. So start to explore archetypes. Like I mentioned, Salvador Dali consulted with Hitchcock for the scariest kind of elements in most people's dreams. So common archetypal fearful things. Doesn't have to be fearful, but Hitchcock had horror movies, so he liked fearful. But when we tune into archetypes, we're really talking about some imagery, maybe sort of mixed with feelings, metaphors, whatever you want to call it. Maybe sort of sequences also. It's not just one image, but it's like a chase dream or naked or scantily dressed in public. That's another pretty common dream, believe it or not. And we pull it in. We don't necessarily have to know exactly what it represents or it's about, although most of the common themes I've shared many times in my articles, what they're about and what people can connect and what the lesson is, because it's usually a life lesson. For the scary things, it's usually a life lesson. But if we include the archetype, that'll probably resonate with a lot of people because it's a subconscious thing that everybody uses, kind of an inner language. So that's one little tip. Explore archetypes, at least explore your own personal archetypes. Like I don't usually say everybody's dream means a certain thing, because fire could be like a fire in the fireplace for one person, could be a house burning down for another, could be a candle. Yeah, so it can have a personal aspect. But if we explore our personal archetype lexicon, maybe watch our dreams, record them, track them a little bit, look at commonalities, underline key people or key like plot elements, that can really probably resonate with lots of people because it's coming from the collective unconscious, or at least our personal unconscious connected to others.
Yeah. So for the audience, please feel free to share some dream-inspired films that you love, and we'll highlight some.
Yeah, there's lots out there. Which ones do you like? Do you guys know any film inspired by or that include dreams?
Felt like just dream-inspired. I don't.
Or that they sort of cover the topic of dreaming?
Well, what about Star Wars when he Lucas. Well, maybe it wasn't a dream, and maybe it was just when he was crossing one of the bridges in San Francisco. He saw these big, like, they're like cranes, and they ended up being the monsters. Do you remember those?
Yeah. I pass by there often and I look at them.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
The walker, that kind of big robot. I guess it's called a robot walker. Those are the things that actually lift all the heavy crates and everything off the boats there. And I think it's the East Bay up by.
yeah, right by Richmond or something.
Yeah. A little bit north of Richmond, even. That's a good one in a way. I mean, that's a visual archetype, but it is around the world because most sports have something very close to that. And so it's kind of aligned well with the idea of using something archetypal or cross-cultural. In this case, I was usually more encouraging people to explore inner themes. But, any good writer, any good artist also uses outer themes that are common, relationships being a huge one, life and death, family. Hello. Why not use outer themes also? But the inspired themes that can kind of be a little more personal, unique, and really timely too, like the zeitgeist, tuning into what like many people could really resonate with now and maybe benefit from. Like our dreamer Farley, who said he's helped solve world problems. Possibly if he's reading the news, you're tuning into big archetypes of events, maybe world leaders or whatever. And naturally, dreams want to help and solve our subconscious. Really a little tip here. It's sort of a technique if you want to use it as that, because being inspired about like staying motivated over time could be helpful for dreams and including dreams. And I'll make the connection here. Most people don't make that. In daytime, we actually have dreams often, but we call it intuition. Or maybe we call it a gut feeling or an impulse, or I just have this insight. But something that's not logical. It kind of comes from, non sequitur, or it comes from a feeling or a body plays an impulse. That'll be very close to what dreaming is. And as we recall dreams and record them and tell people and draw them and create music, we're actually increasing the neural pathway. We're increasing the bandwidth of our internet connection. And that'll help bring our dreams truer into life and help many people. So it's kind of an invisible technique that intuition is dreams. You want to boost your intuition in waking life? Why not? Just connect with your dreams, record them, act on them.
Farley brings up one of his films, Chris Nolan's Inception, is one of his favorite movies. So
definitely very tied with dreams and lucid dreaming, especially. Yeah. Hollywood version. But some of the principles are very true. And by the way, anybody who wants to watch the recent one, I think it's just out. It's kind of on the top, sort of trending right now on Netflix. In Your Dreams. It's kind of a Disney or Pixar kind of movie. Two of the guys from Pixar. Very well done principles. A little bit. There's a couple. Well, not quite errors. A couple there things in there I wouldn't have consulted on because I consult for film. I wouldn't have encouraged, but pretty well done for kids to start explore guiding our dreams. So check out In Your Dreams on Netflix. That's a fun one that explores, childlike wonder and lucid dreaming and things we can do when we consciously guide our dreams.
That's great. We're getting ready to move into our final segment here, but before we close, you've already given us some wonderful tips, but let's get some takeaways that the audience can take with them.
Participation, because there's some sort of tips and like insights at least that can lead to action included along the way. Some of the star dreamers we talked about, act on the nightmare, turn it into creative art. A little more practical is how could we really develop the internet connection? In other words, how could we recall dreams a little better? That's a pretty good way to connect to the internet. One simple thing is wake up very quiet. So kind of make sure that you're not waking up to an alarm, alarm anyways. There's different kinds of alarms. Some are a little bit better, but an audio alarm is okay. And sometimes, you have to get to the meeting or you have to get the kids to school or whatever your required time is. That's fine. But then set a body clock or an intention, maybe 15 minutes before or whatever. What does that mean? Well, I fall asleep and I say, okay, I have to get up to take the kids to school at this time, but I'm going to set my intention. Dear dreams, dear body, even, kind of a little suggestion there. Wake me up 15 minutes or whatever the perfect time is before that so I can record my dreams a little bit. And I don't have to have bam, 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 bam. The actual alarm goes off at that time. So in case we do sleep through it, it's still there. So quiet is very good when we wake up. Try not to have too much sound. Movement, right? When you wake up, if you change body position, actually go back to the same position you woke up in. That's not obvious, but that's very important because different blood flow, neural pathways, even like the energy around our body, the balance system. So try to go back. If you didn't move at all, even better. Try not to open your eyes. The visuals are huge for disturbing dreams. So if you did open them, that's not the end of the world. Just close them quietly and kind of let it come back from the inner vision or the inner sight. And if we keep the physical senses low like that, those are a few examples, try not to have too much in our environment. Then it's usually easy to catch, like fishing. Here, I'll use my fishing now. Maybe hook a little bit of a feeling or a sensation or a couple images, or maybe a full-blown dream or two. Or if you're lucky and you have it developed, you might get 10 dreams. And then you have to start suggesting, hey, which are kind of like the today, not tomorrow, the TNT action items, dynamite, better work on this today. If I have a nightmare, that's a TNT dream. Deal with it today, or there's going to be a problem in a week or tomorrow. Or it has a strong feeling of like beauty, joy, laughter, or something. That's usually a bit of a calling dream. So not necessarily an unpleasant, probable future, the nightmare kind. But it's calling us towards a bright vision or new song creation. Most of the songs that came in dreams are kind of calling dreams. If you compose me, if you record me, I will bring you success. Charlie Wilson dreamt the Grammy winning, or his wife actually dreamt, forget her name, but Big Jazz said, if you act on the song, the melody that came along with the dream, you can actually be nominated for a Grammy. Didn't say win, which is interesting. So it was very specific. And they ended up going, oh boy, and recorded the song and worked on the song, got some good artists, and they were nominated exactly for a Grammy. So it could be a calling dream. And once you start connecting more with them, then the language comes, your subconscious comes. There's a bit of a neural pathway. And it's easier to recall and kind of know a little bit after a while which dreams are the more action items or which ones have gifts. Yeah, just keep the physical senses low. That'll really help get it going, and record it in some way or another.
And you've written multiple books and studied hundreds of artists. What's one tip that you can give for overcoming creative blocks?
That's a good question. There might be a little hint in the question. Like, don't believe too strongly in the block. Sounds kind of vague or subtle, but I'm kind of using this from actual experiences and from experiences of these many artists. That once you kind of get into it, you're kind of deer in the headlights. I'm stuck. It becomes a bit of a mantra. How would we get out of that? Well, it's usually a bit of emotional or body state to shift out of that gear. Kind of see, are we really in our head and kind of freak, anxiety, a thing, oh no, the bills are coming or whatever the stress is, I'm not producing. Kind of get out of that somehow quickly, take a walk, to go on a little mini trip somewhere. I would encourage people also to learn how a little more quickly than that, like within minutes, get certain breathing techniques and switch to spontaneity, playfulness. Hey, you know what? What the heck if I just blow this whole next chapter in 1 hour? Let's say I'm writing a screenplay or a book. I just do a whole chapter 1 hour. I could throw it out. Let's just spontaneously see whatever comes as my most crazy, playful idea for where the characters would want to take themselves. Or something that gets out of that, like anxiety. We call it beta state, high beta. And you can see on the brainwaves, you're actually going into a different, maybe a little more alpha, creative, play, fun. That can help a little bit with creative blocks. Find mentors, find a feedback. Sometimes our friends or family, or if we have like a writer group, they'll help kick us into like, I want something by next week. Or, hey, you know what? I tried this crazy thing. I just threw 5 pages on the floor and then I picked up the words and created a poem. The poem led to me finishing the chapter on my documentary. So play, I think, is a good one. And writers group, and probably many other people have suggestions aside from me.
Well, we've got a believer in Farley here at the in our audience. He's a big fan. I tend to
Oh, okay, Farley. Hey, thanks for the comments.
Yeah, and probably should pay more attention. Your panel reminds me to do this, and I want to pick up your book to read about examples from others. So, yay!
Oh, great!
Right?
Yeah, the Dreams Behind the Music talks about music artists, a couple of filmmakers and inventors. But it's artist language for really a universal principle. A mom can use the same principles. A doctor, a podcast host.
And let's see. Raina says, I had a really bizarre horror nightmare just last night. Not usually for me to dream such things, like someone was shape shifting. I don't know what that is. And weird events happening in the multiple space. So I wonder what the dream wants me to know.
Oh, that's a good ending. I like the wonder part.
Yeah.
Because it means like I'm sort of inviting it instead of the message I've often heard from parents of, oh, it was a bad dream. Don't worry about it. Just put it away. Don't put it away. First of all, it might be a creative insight, but it might be a warning. It might be an opening. Usually nightmares or upsetting dreams are showing us something we don't consciously know or that we've been kind of avoiding.
Right.
If this was my dream there, dear Raina, I might take it as, hey, there's this new element, new energy coming into my, at least subconscious. Shape-shifting. Shape-shifting can mean like morphing ideas, moving my feelings into my thinking, exploring different states, shifting shapes, creative mishmash, new ways of mixing my different selves, from my like taking care of business self to my playful creative child, and see what happens when you kind of do a collage of these different energies. That could be exploring shapeshifting and not being only freaked out about all the new change that it could bring.
We're just down at the hour mark. So thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
And thank you to everyone for joining us live. Your participation really makes this conversation so much richer.
Absolutely. Keep exploring, stay inspired, and remember, dream with heart, share true art.
Until next episode, stay tuned for more conversations at the Cinematic Bridge presented by Golden Gate Films. Thanks again, Craig.